You're listening to Horsemanship, Growth, and Gratitude with Miranda Allyn Horsemanship, where we discuss training wins and fails, mindset, personal growth, and everything in between. So grab your favorite cup of coffee or reins and let's ride. Hey there, it's Miranda Allyn, and welcome back to Horsemanship, Growth, and Gratitude. Today, I wanted to talk about the horse's 5 main body parts and the one that I see riders overlook and underuse more than any other. When you start using this body part intentionally during training, it can change the way the entire horse moves from their balance to their body connection and even their focus. From a simple big picture perspective, the horse has 5 main body parts. You have the head, the neck, the shoulders, the ribcage, and the hindquarters. When you are able to control each one of these body parts individually, forward, backwards, left, and right, and then together in tandem, forward, backwards, left, and right, you will be able to get the horse to do just about anything that you want as long as they're in a thinking state of mind. While each body part is extremely important, I feel that there is one of them that is often overlooked the most and definitely misunderstood the most, and that is the rib cage. I say this because I most often see riders trying to constantly fight to pick their horse's shoulders up or to get them to collect up with the lower headset or to push their hindquarters in to engage them. But here's the thing, each and every one of those issues that they're trying to fix has a log jam further upstream in the rib cage. See, every horse is naturally front end heavy. While some breeds do naturally carry more weight on their front end than others, all horses typically carry 60 to 70% of their body weight naturally on their front end. Of course, a majority of the tasks that we ask our horses to do require that they have significantly less than 60 or 70% of their body weight on their front end. Their shoulders should act as a steering wheel, being light and nimble, allowing the horse to pick up and move its front end around to change direction easily and with little effort. But instead, we find our horses constantly dropping their shoulders and being hard to change direction and then swinging their butt everywhere they go. That horse is dropping his shoulder because he's trying to catch himself from going off balance because he's leaning too much weight on his front end. He's swinging his butt because it's significantly easier to pivot on his front end than his hindquarters because of that excess weight that he's carrying on the shoulders. And he's not lowering his head because his back is hollowed out. And when the back is hollowed out, his head is raised as a counterweight. To understand all of this, we first need to look at the rib cage as a bridge that the horse uses to transfer body weight back and forth from his shoulders to his hindquarters. Now, if you were driving a car across a suspension bridge, would you want one that was designed like the Mackinac Bridge, where it's designed to move and to flex a little bit with the wind and the weight crossing? Or would you want a rickety old wooden one that has dry rotted boards and a crumbly foundation that looks like it could fall over with a slight wind gust? Of course, you're going to want the one that is going to move and to flex and work with, not against, outside acting forces. When your horse is doing everything mentioned above, like dropping his shoulders, swinging his butt, his rib cage is stiff and his back is hollowed out. And it's because he cannot distribute his weight around easily on that type of stiff bridge. Now, when we get the horse to soften his rib cage, his bridge can now direct the flow of traffic, aka his weight, easily. True collection is when the horse flexes and rounds his back, transferring excess weight off of his shoulders and onto his hindquarters. His hindquarters are the engine, and the engine needs power to produce more power. The horse's hindquarters needs that excess weight to help engage and help push forward with force. The horse also needs his hindquarters to absorb force, such as when stopping. Most riders will expect to feel a hump in the horse's back when I say, hey, the horse needs to round his back. But in all reality, it's more like a muscle flex. And you're definitely not going to feel that through a thick saddle pad and a heavy saddle. What you will feel instead is your horse is going to have more impulsion. He's going to be engaging his hindquarters more. He's going to have more fluidity in the stride. He's going to be softer in the face, and he's going to be easier to steer around. It's not just riding either. During groundwork, a horse also has to soften his ribcage to effectively move all the body parts. On the ground, are you having a horse that's trouble backing up? Well, guess what? He's front end heavy because his rib cage is stiff and he's not transferring that weight to his hindquarters to be able to get up under himself to back up. If you have a horse that has trouble engaging the forequarters, such as pivoting away from you, once again, he's definitely front end heavy because his rib cage is stiff and he's not engaging his hindquarters to do that maneuver. A horse will show you his level of respect through his shoulders. If you try to get a horse to send off in a different direction to go out to lunge, and if he darn near plows you over walking by, he's saying that he does not respect you. But if you send him off and he goes out of his way to pivot out and away from you and to walk out and around, he's showing that his level of respect is much higher because he is softening his rib cage and he is engaging his hindquarters much more, which does require a bit more effort. If you ever watch a horse ride in a trailer turn loose, they are always going to choose to ride backwards with their butt facing the front of the trailer. That's because it's going to be much more comfortable and safer for them taking any impacts on their large, muscly butt than on their head, neck, and shoulders. So it's no surprise that for a horse to do a nice sliding stop, he has to sit down and absorb that impact on his butt, not on his front end. When the horse does flex his rib cage and transfer the excess weight onto the hindquarters, that allows the shoulders to free up and become much more efficient at steering. When a horse does this, his head is just going to naturally lower itself into that collected look that everyone desires because it serves as a counterweight. The key here, though, is to realize that depending on the horse's conformation determines where he's going to naturally carry his headset. So many people try to force their horse to carry his head into a position that they think is collected, but in all actuality is just an unnatural position for his conformation, and they end up making the horse's stride much more choppy than it naturally could be. This is why when I'm first working with a horse, especially a colt, I don't care where their head is at riding around. Obviously, I don't want them gaping at the bit and fighting and trying to run off, but as long as they're respectfully carrying their head around, I'm going to leave the head alone because what I carry more about is how soft is the rib cage, because I know that the head is just a byproduct and it's going to eventually come down and to be in that collected state once his rib cage is soft and his hindquarters are engaged. I have seen this time and time again with clients. When I finally get the rider to back off the horse's face and instead focus on softening the rib cage, the next thing they know, that horse is extending more beautifully than they've ever seen and has a much lower natural headset than they were even trying to force. And the horse also rides around much more relaxed and happy because he's comfortable. My advice to clients is that if you desire a certain look for a headset, buy a horse with a conformation that will match. If you take a look at a reining bred quarter horse, they're going to have a cute little C-shaped round frame with a lower tightened neck, and that's going to allow them to run around with their nose practically on the ground. Compared to a thoroughbred, which is going to be built more uphill, their neck is going to tie in higher, and it's going to cause them to be more front end heavy and have longer strides to race. And they're just naturally going to have a higher collected headset when they are collected up. Sure, you may be able to ride around on a thoroughbred with them collected up in their nose just above the ground like a reiner for a couple strides, but it's going to be extremely uncomfortable for them and they're going to hate their job. Personally, I know I like horses with a naturally lower headset. So when I bought my last mare, I kept this in mind, and sure enough, her C-shaped conformation fit my style very well. Now that we understand the physiology a little better of the rib cage, let's take a look at what exercises we can do to soften the rib cage. My favorite is lateral flexion. I love to do lots of lateral flexion when I'm warming up or cooling down my horses, especially at a walk. It's a great way to not only stretch out their rib cage, stretch out their muscles, warm up their muscles, but it's also going to be practicing softening their face, and it is a fabulous exercise for teaching the release of pressure. You cannot achieve vertical flexion without first mastering lateral flexion. So many riders I see are constantly working on vertical flexion, but as soon as they back off and they work on the lateral flexion, the next time they go to ask for vertical, it comes so much more easier and natural to them and the horse. Another great outcome from lateral flexion is teaching the horse to relax and walk out in what I call four-wheel drive. That is where their 4 feet are moving equally, and it helps the horse stay upright and balanced. This is especially important for a horse to be able to do in sports that the may experience slick ground at faster speeds. Take barrel racing in particular, because that's what I know the most about. You'll often hear people say that the ground is slick and that the horses who can stand up on the ground have safer turns so they can go faster. What this means is that those horses are more naturally collected up and they have their weight distributed more evenly across their hindquarters and their shoulders, and that allows them to stay in a more balanced four-wheel drive forward motion. Whereas some other horses turn very front end heavy, and while they may be able to make a faster turn on good ground, it's going to be both extremely uncomfortable to the horse and the rider, and they're going to be much more likely to have slick ground give out from underneath them, causing them to slip and fall. We all know that performance horses can get hot. Many think that horses get hot because they're excited to run. And yes, and in some cases that is true. But in a lot of other cases, I think what is really going on is that horse is full of anxiety from the anticipation. And it could be good or bad anticipation, but it's definitely going to depend on anticipation. Is the rider going to catch them off guard? Is he going to catch them off balance? Is there going to be surprise parties running up to a barrel and ripping on the rein? So remember, we control the mind through moving their feet. Doing exercises like lateral flexion at a walk is a great way to move their feet, to redirect that nervous energy elsewhere, because an object in motion is easier to redirect than to completely stop. And anyone who has ridden a nervous horse before knows that one of the biggest mental challenges is to get a nervous horse to relax and to walk. Lateral flexion is a great exercise to flip that switch from the reactive to the thinking side and achieve everything that we just talked about. I hope this helps give you a better understanding of how your horse's body is designed and can give you more clarity in not only the exercises that you're performing with your horse, but why. Thank you for tuning in to Horsemanship Growth and Gratitude with Miranda Allyn Horsemanship. If you've enjoyed this episode, I would love for you to follow the podcast, share it with a friend who loves horses just as much as we do. And while you're at it, be sure to check out my website, mirandaallyn.net, to stay updated on the launch of my upcoming online course, Essentials of Horsemanship. And if you could also please leave a review, I would greatly appreciate that. So until next time, remember, horsemanship is in the details.